What it is, what's up? Got your Auburn content in the cut. I think I missed the burner game we played after Baylor, but 2 out of 3 will take it. Kind of like the wins here, 2 wins out of 3. This one was maybe I think honestly the least contested to date. Honestly, I was supposed to charge my phone. Golly. Anyway, just a comprehensive butt kicking, really. When you look at the statistics, if you watch the game, if you look at some of the players and the way they were looking out there, even without like looking at the score, one team just got beat the hell down, and the other team had to just sit there and take it. I really don't know how like the format is. Like sometimes I look at the players individually, sometimes I look at the game flow, sometimes I do both. We'll look at the players. I mean, you get 83 points against a Power Six or Power Five team. I guess the ACC is a conference that looks at Notre Dame as a member in basketball. So we'll say Power Five. Um, you just scroll down here, and shout out to they did a little update ESPN to the graphics here for the team stats. I kind of like that a little bit. Let's go here to box score. Just gonna play that. I need you to not play that. All right, so start out with Janai Broom here, the center. 7 of 11, 1 and 2 from three, only one free throw, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, 3 turnovers, et cetera, 4 fouls. The 4 fouls, I guess, he kind of plays sometimes more of a. I mean, he's not athletically inclined, right? I think he's a very smart defender in how he moves his feet more often than not. Actually, is decent on the perimeter considering like how unathletic he is. But when he gets blown by, it's like he'll do like the reaching, right? Like just to let me reach out and get like a cheap foul, or let me try to jump after the fact when my guy's already at the rim and basically just bear over him. He'll do some of those every once in a while, and when you see that, you really just have to kind of like acknowledge like this is a guy that's limited physically, and it wasn't really a big problem. There were 2 cheap fouls I could think off the top of my head, but for the most part, it wasn't really that much of a problem. 7 of 11. He started off, I think they said, with 8 straight points, more or less, in the beginning of the game. So pretty much the rest of the game, he was almost frozen out. Um, it wasn't really a problem with anything they were doing per se. It's just that the ball, I guess, didn't find him in the same way. Like it was a concerted effort in the beginning to get him involved, and just kind of kept on rotating. Uh, Contributed in rebounding. I feel like the rebounding was more of a disappointment than one would think. We were physically superior to Notre Dame in this game, so to there's a lot of like I don't want to say long rebounds, but just rebounds that kind of hung around for a while. And Notre Dame really competed. You know, they at least tried to when it came to rebounding at least. And Janai Broom, they're five. He had 6 rebounds. They had more of a game rebounding effort. You kind of see this guy right here, 11 rebounds. So that's crazy. I think he's a pretty tall guard. I feel like I remember him a little bit. He went to the cup pretty often, as I recall. They had a lot of guys who look very similar. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I'm obviously no prejudice, nothing. I'm just getting the jokes off, but they do look. A lot of those guys look pretty similar. I will say. Um, so yeah, that dude went to the cup pretty often. I imagine he caught his own rebounds fairly often. But Chris Moore, as Chris Moore goes, in the right spot very often. It's to me like Chris Moore is the same player more or less every game, which is why I always like him. He's a constant, and Auburn has not had a ton of constants the last few seasons. He's always going to cut. He's always going to be and cut, even though he may not get the ball. He got it fairly consistently in this game, but he may not get the ball all the time in those cuts. He still does it. He's around the rim fairly often, or really very often, and he boxes out, which did not happen often in this game. So 3 of 4, 3 free throws. That might be a high for if you have to go back quite a few games to find a log where he did more than 4 free throws. 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Always gives you a very positive. The hell was that? Always gives you a very positive lineup. Jalen actually really contributed in this game. Fought for the rebounds, played some really good defense. Nothing I showed up in the statistics. He did have two blocks. Both were very resounding blocks. Like one was like, the last one was like the guard was being contested, and he was very short, and Jalen was like right behind him basically already. He tries to go for a layup, and Jalen just like gets smacked out of it. The first one was just thudding, like very resounding type block. And he had more good plays that really didn't get registered. I think he's been a plus on defense so far this season. And when he really like is committed to crashing the boards like he did today, he's a real asset. I wish his offense would be more of a consistent, kind of factor in all this. But he is who he is at this point. I said the same thing after the Baylor game. He is who he is, and for the most part, that was a very very positive player today. Denver kind of just floated out there, honestly. It's tough. Like when you have these games where I think Trey and our boy, um, Jamar Chase got a touchdown. Thank God. I was getting murdered in that game, dude, because Burrow got out. Denver Jones just wasn't. So far, I think they're trying to find ways to use him. He's pretty much more of the Jamal Johnson than the Bryce Brown, which I think some people saw him being like more of an on-ball guard, someone who could probably create for himself more. And he had like a real 3 point percentage in his previous stop. So we always knew he could shoot, but I think people respect a little bit more like on ball chops. And so far, that's not been the case. However, the game plan really hasn't called for him very much, and he just hasn't been involved in much, honestly. He's been just kind of playing his part, being a spacer, an option out there. The Baylor game is probably the best usage, the best like, and not the entire game honestly, because the second half of that game kind of floated, but the first half of that game where he kind of was doing some more um, shooting, and also looking to drive off of the threat of his shot. That's like the ideal vision of him, but this was not that. Aden 5 of 9, 4 of 5, 101 from the stripe, 1 rebound, 5 assists, only 2 turnovers, and 1 start. Looked decent enough on defense. Didn't look boring on defense. His guy was typically around the cup pretty often, so that's the name of the short guards. You're gonna have to give up sometimes. Their guards, the opposing guards, getting rebounds. We saw it often with like the Sharif Coopers of the world. Sharif Cooper actually got a pretty good amount of rebounding numbers because he flirted with triple doubles fairly often. But like the Wendell Greens, who was always challenged to get more rebounds by Pro, it felt like, guys like that. Um, got the start, like I said. I see why they went for that. When you have just like basically the two types of point guards that can get others involved. Ideally in these archetypes, you have the facilitator Trey Donaldson, who literally will sacrifice like his own offense, his own scoring sometimes to just make sure everybody else feels involved, swing it out, making the right play. Sometimes not even like looking to score, just making sure it gets everybody else involved. And you have the guy who's the scoring dynamo, who by nature of his his offensive expertise can get other guys open that way. So he's not going to make like wildly crazy passes. He's not going to be doing these no looks, and he's not probably going to be looking to pass first for the most part. But because of what he does in his scoring, it's going to help the team in many ways. So this wasn't a very like shot hungry game from Holloway. Honestly, like I felt almost all of his shots were within the flow of the offense. He looked pretty often when he was meeting like help, pressure on the ball, looked to pass it out, didn't take crazy shots. I think he learned from that Baylor game. The Baylor game towards the back half, even though there were some shots that he was even making in the first half, it's a rhythm thing, right? Like he was taking those shots out of rhythm and taking those shots like to try to get Auburn back in the game at a certain point. Just not a good feel. This one, I felt like he was actually like a point guard almost. And I know he had like 6 assists in the Baylor game. He had 5 assists here, and the assists haven't been the problem, the numbers. But sometimes you got to like look past the numbers. Even though this was only 5 assists, I feel like for the most part he kept the offense humming, and his dude, listen. So you have, let's say you have your typical, ball screen offense. Center comes over. And there was one play in particular I'm thinking on top of my head. So center has the ball, top the key. Holloway comes over from the, I think it was the right elbow, comes into, I think it would be called a curl, but comes over for the handoff. Not even a dribble handoff, but just a handoff. And at this point, once you receive the handoff, the center sets a screen on a guard that's trailing Holloway, the defender. And at this point, you have basically, I'm trying to do this in my head, but basically you have center Holloway coming this way, and then guard here. The center's guy is in drop, which drop coverage basically means instead of playing up on the screen, you're giving space, protecting the drive more often than not. The thing is, you have to know the scouting report and you have to be able to actually execute the scouting report. Most centers are in drop because they can't play up on screens. I don't know. I forgot their center. I'm not sure how well he managed screens in the situation. But in this particular play, he didn't look at his scouting report because basically defender is stonewalled. Center is like here, like maybe I don't know, 7 feet away, like way too many feet away. Holloway in rhythm takes it, drains it. The way the net sounded on Auburn was making some of these threes was beautiful. The Donaldson threes, the Holloway threes sounded incredible when they were making these shots. And part of that is because of how pure the shot forms were today. Holloway drained that shit coming off of that curl handoff. And I mean, the dude is just such a he's a movement shooter. He's a static shooter. Um, I don't know how else to put. He can be off ball, and most of his threes are not off the off ball variety. But he can even be off ball shooter. I mean, that's the easiest, honestly, for most shooters. The dude is stellar. Like his what he gives you in that spacing. I'm not like invoking Steph Curry to like gas Aden up to that degree, but when you are of that level where your shooting is that good, guys got to play up, and I mean play up like 5 feet before the 3 point line. When they're doing that, I mean Janai Broom is working, Jalen is working, whoever the center is working. It helps a lot with those flex actions that they run for like Cheney or Jalen. I mean it's just he has gravity, which a lot of people use that term, but he has real gravity. Just kind of go through the rest here, speed up. Dylan Cardwell played really good defense. 4 turnovers, has a couple. It's Dylan Cardwell. We'll just keep moving. But I thought it was a positive overall. Chaney Johnson, they're running some of those Chumo Kiki like kind of split actions for him. He looks like he has really good footwork, honestly. I see why they're running for him. Him and CBM Baker Mazar are not currently like showing off the 3 pointer too much, which was advertised to be a plus for them. But they're working around the rim very well. Trey Donaldson, point guard. Really, I mean, truly, like this dude is a joy to watch play the point guard position. I thought that last year in his limited minutes, I was honestly perturbed that he didn't get more minutes at times, but I understand that he was not always looking for a shot, which does hurt the offense sometimes. When you have a point guard that is purely like pass first, does not look to score whatsoever in any situation, that can hurt a lot sometimes. And when you had last year where the space was already clogged, having another guy that was not willing to pull the trigger from outside did not help. Although he still had the vision. He still had the vision, and he has a vision this season. Dude, he does things that don't even like show up in statistics, whatever. Like those skip ahead passes just put such a constant threat in the back of a defender's head. Like you have to be looking up as soon as it's rebounded and the ball finds his hands. And if he's the one catching the rebounds, which thankfully for defense, he doesn't like really put too much of a factor on rebounding for Auburn. If he was like basically think Westbrook in 2016, his MVP year, when they literally ran an offense to get Westbrook the ball because when it was in his hand, he had to push ahead. He had his just pure speed as a dynamo threat. And that just got the offense going. That was the easiest offense OKC had that year. And when Trey Lance was in the game, that whole like tempo like premise gets executed to a T. He had some look ahead turnovers in the first game against Baylor. Had no turnovers today against 5 assists. Point guard, defense is slowly coming along. He still needs to work on that, but CBM, like I said, I mean he's doing a good job working around the rim. I'm glad he's putting the ball on the floor and dribbling because he actually has some real layup creativity. Very long, was a factor in the rebounds. Always gets in the midst in those kind of like contentious. I don't say scraps, but like kind of reaching for the ball, like Katie Johnson does. They have a lot of similarities, and you can see it on the court as well as off the court. Leroy Berman was there. He goes for the rebounds and stuff like that. Katie Johnson, uh, Katie Johnson experience took the same shots he probably made last game. Horrible shots, mainly not in the flow of the offense, but it's Katie. What are you gonna do? What are we at right now? Let me see viewfinder. 16 minutes. So overall, as far as what this kind of portends for the rest of the season, I think more or less these lineups that they're running right now, rotation wise, I think this is what Pearl. I got to stop hitting the damn desk. Uh, I think this is kind of what Pearl would like to see. I mean, it kind of figured Holloway would eventually start. Donaldson is very dynamic passer, but they need a little bit more scoring punch with the way the rotations are currently. Chris Moore, obviously, not as much of a selfish scorer and doesn't get involved too much. Jalen, kind of flashes on and off. I think you would have expected a lot more at Denver as a scoring threat, but he's kind of trying to figure out his kind of place in all this so far. So if you're going to have it where you're pretty much getting not a lot from 2 through 4, you do need a little bit more of a scoring punch, which Aden or Trey could do a little bit more, but it's not his nature, right? So I understand why you bring in Aden, and then when you have those bench lineups where you have Katie and Trey, the tempo, the speed that you're exhibiting is really dynamo stuff. I mean, this wasn't the best example of that with uh, Katie's like scoring not being kind of on tonight, but we have like Trey trying to look for his shot, Katie contributing a little bit more in terms of like actually scoring, and then you have these other dudes who run, Cheney, Baker, Cardwell's always looking for the lob. When you have that happening, I mean, really the pace doesn't drop off. So I understand what they're doing here. I think it makes sense to me to do it like this. The only other like change I could probably see happening is maybe you sub out SEMO for CBM at some point. That's the only thing I could see is that. Everything else kind of like adds up to me. Like I think 4 out of the 5 positions are pretty much locked down at this point. Denver, although he doesn't have the same like scoring chops so far this season that KD has exhibited, um, he's stable. He doesn't look to make like crazy plays, and the idea of his shot I think brings more value to opening things up for the starting lineup than like KD driving to the rim and going ham and all that stuff. If the shot comes together for Denver, like he's locked in too. You just got to like kind of get that going. I thought he's been okay with defense so far. He hasn't been really bad either. So that's really about it. I guess you want to go to some team stats here to kind of see like how good the defense was. It wasn't. I didn't really touch on it too much, but I'm kind of offensive minded by trade, and defense is also just harder to analyze in offense. You can kind of usually see statistics and then remember plays that feed into those stats when it comes to offense. Defense doesn't have counting stats the same way, so it goes into that. 33% from the field for Notre Dame. I guess you can say 34. 2 26 from three. You could see that incompetency from three very loudly in this game. 15-19 for the stripe. They didn't really like put pressure on the rim. I mean, they got punked in the first like half of the first half, but they made like a real emphasis on like just fighting back. And the fouls about even. I thought it was about it. I thought it was a really clean game, honestly, for the most part. There was some ticky tack stuff and interspersed at the game, which happens with college basketball. But I thought it was a very clean game, honestly, for the most part. The refs were not too overbearing, and I thought they called the right ones for the most part. These are some big ones here. The rebounding was also huge because they pretty much kept Notre Dame even within like the what, a 23-point loss, 24. Um, for it to even be that close was because Notre Dame really fought for rebounds. They got 14 offensive rebounds and then only 21 defensive rebounds, but the offensive rebounds were more important. They got a lot of second chance points, which I don't think is a stat on ESPN, but that pretty much cut them the game. Only 9 assists. They actually had more steals than we did, which can happen to Auburn, how kind of hectic they go sometimes. They had 2 blocks. They had 13 turnovers, so turnovers were pretty much tied. It's kind of about what you're doing off those turnovers. Like Auburn, like scores a lot if they're doing their thing when it comes to turnovers. They're scoring a lot off of those turnovers, so to speak. And I don't think Notre Dame did that to such a degree. Also, only scored 59 points, so I know they didn't score that much. Period. So, I think Auburn won the battles they needed to win. Although the rebounding should definitely be a little bit scary because they were, like I said, they were physically like better than Notre Dame in a lot of positions, and they got out rebounded in this one, and I think they got out rebounded against Baylor too. So it's weird that team this long from 3 to 5. Chris Moore's a little undersized, but he's a very smart rebounder and very athletic. Obviously, a team with this kind of length, like getting beat, which being tied with Notre Dame is kind of getting beat in this situation. That's a little bit concerning, but that's kind of like nitpicking a little bit. Hopefully that improves a little bit. We'll see, but overall, you can't be mad at it. St. Bonaventure and I think was it Oklahoma State? I think it was Oklahoma State. They were pretty much neck and neck. I only like kind of checked in and out of that game, but I would still have Auburn probably like 7.5, 8.5 favorite against either of those teams. They were 14.5, and this one they covered by 10 points. So we'll see what Vegas has for us, and we'll see what the rest of the season has for us. I'm really encouraged so far about the point guard splits, which I thought was going to be strength of this entire season for us, and so far it looks like that. All right, that's about it here. Shout out Leroy Berman.